Hello, today is Wednesday, April 22nd. Welcome to episode 586 of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you quickly up to speed 3 times a week on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. I'm NSI Advisory Board member Lester Munson. I'm joined today by Director of Policy John Lipsey and Senior Fellows Jessica Jones, Morgan Vigna, and Andy Kaiser. All-star lineup, folks, really probably the best lineup we could possibly have. We're going to talk about Iran and the latest events there because that is the big news by far. Situation kind of stable a little bit. The U.S. continues to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. Iran continues to hold ships traveling through there at threat. There is a ceasefire as such, given those parameters. There were no discussions between the U.S. and Iran in Pakistan as we thought might have happened in the last few hours. So, Morgan, let's go to you first here. A lot of questions about what happens next. Where is this thing going? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think the president is learning the hard way that it's a lot easier to get into wars in the Middle East than it is to get out of them. This is a president that has campaigned on getting the United States out of forever wars, and yet the Middle East is, to use a bad phrase, a ground zero for those types of conflicts. And so I think moving forward, the president obviously has the November midterm election on his mind. Republicans are, frankly, have high odds to lose the majority in the House, and even the Senate has been in play potentially.
Now higher because of the Virginia referendum.
Yeah, so needless to say, yes, Virginia had a referendum last night in which they are redistricting, and 4 seats are likely to turn blue. Obviously, this is a major loss for the president, and it comes at a time in which he is in a deeply unpopular war. With that said, we are where we are. The president, we are in a ceasefire, supposedly. We'll see if, we return to kinetic strikes. With that said, the president needs to figure out what the long-term solution here is for the United States engagement in Iran. I don't see this resolving itself anytime soon. A sustainable solution is going to take careful thought and consideration about the long-term implications of the Strait of Hormuz, Iran's nuclear capabilities, its role destabilizing the Middle East through its terrorist proxies. And so it's not going to resolve itself through talks in Pakistan. This is going to be a long-term play here, and I think we all need to buckle up and prepare for that.
John Lipsey, you are the Director of Policy of the National Security Institute. Morgan is calling for a long-term strategy here. Agree or disagree?
I was told we were here to talk about the draft, so that's all I'm prepared to speak to.
Linebackers. Get linebackers.
If we don't get Jeremiah Love, I don't know what I'm going to do with myself.
Who is he? What position does he play? I don't even know.
He's a running back, Les.
Oh,
okay. Look, I think she's right, but I think it has always been thus, right? The president got into this war with pretty limited objectives and with actually some humility about what he could accomplish from a long-term sustained perspective. Iran was pursuing certain military capabilities to kind of achieve a strategic benefit, and Trump was trying to deny them that. We have now somehow gotten into this extended negotiation over a grand deal, which of course the president is always attracted to trying to achieve. So I think we're in that dance for a little bit, but I don't. We'll see what happens, but I don't anticipate that deal is going to be forthcoming with the IRGC necessarily. I think even if a deal does come together, it will be sort of like we're in, Schrödinger ceasefire. We'll be in a Schrödinger deal where we either have a deal or don't have a deal, and it's sort of being, whether it's being followed by both parties or not will be a question hanging in the air. So I think, this is always going to be a long-term exercise. I'm a little perplexed that the president is going this far down um, the deal path, rather than declaring victory and achieving his military objectives, which were really his only objectives at the outset. It seems that we have largely achieved those in terms of setting back the nuclear program substantially and setting back their ability to produce ballistic missiles and drones and the rest. But all of that, you're going to be in a maintenance situation over a long period of time, regardless of whether some kind of deal is struck or not. So it seems to me that we are in a long-term play here, but that the president would be. I think the situation he's in right now is actually pretty good, right? So you have a more or less a ceasefire. You have the president sitting back saying, "Here are the terms of the deal. If you guys get your act together and want to come to the table and strike a deal, I'm ready for that." But in the interim, if you want to play around with the Strait of Hormuz, we'll retaliate by shutting down the strait for you as well, and we'll see how long that you're able to withstand that predicament that you've walked yourself into. I'm not sure that the president needs a deal. I don't think he's benefiting himself necessarily by making himself so appear to be so eager for one.
Andy Kaiser, John Lipsey just described Donald Trump as using the word humility. He questioned the nature of rationality itself and then said that Donald Trump is in a pretty good place. Do you agree with all of that?
Well, I will never disagree with my good friend John Lipsey. What I'm looking at, guys, is I thought it was very interesting that the president said out loud that there are different factions amongst the Iranian leadership that the United States is negotiating with, which tells me a couple of things, right? Well, first of all, we've wiped out now 2 levels of their leadership, killed the first level, they reassembled, killed them. So it tells me a couple of things. There are people in that room clearly willing to have a conversation, which is interesting. And there are those who are not, who are probably more ideologically hardened. And I do think this president has difficulty relating to people who are ideological because he himself is so non-ideological. Think of the juxtaposition between the Venezuela situation and this one. In Venezuela, you have people who are beholden to nothing other than power, money, corruption, their own place in the world, versus a regime in Iran that literally thinks, God is telling them to do these things, to, strike against Israel, and to, be conservative socially and morally at home and the rest. So I think the president has a difficult time dealing with those types of folks, which is why the interlocutors, was formerly the Qataris, now the Pakistanis, he's able to deal with a little more easily as they are so much less strident. But yeah, we'll see if all this increased pressure that John just laid out, leads to the Iranians finally crying uncle, which seems to me the strategy. We're just going to put as much pressure on as humanly possible till they do exactly what we want them to do. Or if we hit our limit of, we're in the midterms, gas prices are high, we say uncle.
So I'm just going to just here for a hot second.
Go
And
ahead, Morgan.
for what it's worth, I did raise my hand.
I saw that.
We'll allow it.
Oh, thank you. So I think what many folks failed to consider here is that the Iranians are perfectly comfortable dragging this conflict out. They know that Trump, because he has said that he doesn't like these quote unquote forever wars, that they see this to their advantage. He wants to get out. He's got an election. He hates these rising gas prices. He checks them every day. And they know this. And so it is to their advantage to make this as long and as painful. And so by President Trump being almost too eager, too willing to find, an agreement here, I think that is to our detriment when it comes to, finding a long-term solution.
Jones, a lot of directions we could go here. Is there pressure on the Iranians? Who's actually blockading the strait? Who's daddy right now? I don't know. Where do you want to go with this?
I don't like that last question. I would like that rephrase. No, I think no one is surprised after our discussion on Monday that there's an extension, I'll put in air quotes, of a ceasefire, right? That it is not surprising. It's also not surprising moments after President Trump announces it, you also have Iranian officials claiming we're not going to respect any ceasefire. We're going to do what's in the best interest of our country. So there's clearly a delta between two sides. To Andy's point, who is at the negotiating table? Do they have any power within the regime itself? The IRGC obviously is less inclined to make a deal. And to Morgan's point, they right now have time on their side. The president wants to get out quickly. John said that Iran's boxed in. I actually see the president quite boxed in. So I'm surprised he took that position. A blockade is a long game, right? We're hoping that the economic pressure our blockade creates within Iran will bring them to the table. But to Morgan's point, when you have a dictatorship, you can extend timelines, right? It's at the will of the regime. So they're going to move slowly. They're in it to make this as painful for the president as they can. And he's already looking towards November. And so I think the White House is in a hard spot. Like, I'm wondering, okay, the ceasefire is extended. We have the vice president sitting literally on a tarmac waiting to see if he can fly to Pakistan. That's embarrassing, right? Like, what power do we have here? What are we trying to get out of a ceasefire? Like, what's next?
I think, all right, so for whatever it's worth, I think the two big questions here are, is Trump willing to kind of let go of the November election as his primary objective here and kind of double down on a long-term strategy with the Iranians? If the answer to that is yes, then maybe he does have the upper hand. And the second question is, where can he push, if at all, where can he push China on this question? At the end of the day, the country that loses the most because the Strait of Hormuz is blocked is China. They get a lot of their oil from there, not necessarily just from Iran, but also from the other countries in the Persian Gulf. So there's a potentially big summit coming up here in May. Can this be brought up to the Trump Xi Jinping level and have a different outcome?
I'll say quickly, there's a number of articles. There's a number of more deals being done in the Chinese yuan because of the blockade and because of sanctions. So actually China is seeing it. John Lipsey is shaking his head, so he's going to disagree. So maybe those reports are wrong. But there's also, the Pentagon has had to deny that ships are actually evading the U.S. blockade. Iranian ships are. So that China would be at their detriment right now is also, I think, a part
John,
of the argument.
You get last word. You're the policy director.
I just think that the idea that China is like the winner out of this war is just not a thing. I don't agree, Les, though, that they're the country most impacted by the closure of the strait. That country is Iran. And
you're correct. I agree.
And so I think it is on. I think is that should be the issue where the president focuses and essentially withdraws from the military campaign, assuming he believes that he's accomplished his military objectives on the ballistic missile front and on the nuclear program, and allow the Iranian regime to be squeezed by the strait. I just don't see the president as concerned about the markets and gas prices and the upcoming election as everyone assumes. There's very little.
I think
there are a lot of truth posts that people like to point to, but I don't see any actual actions that demonstrate.
I think he's concerned about looking like a winner, so that can be seen a lot of different
for
outputs.
Sure. And he has plenty to declare victory on the military campaign, and to Morgan's earlier point, the election wasn't looking so great before the Iran war, so.
All right, folks, we're going to leave it there. We're going to leave it on Lipsy. Donald Trump is daddy. Here we go. That's a wrap. Thanks always to Grace Trice, Claude Jennings, and the NSI staff for their help in producing today's episode. Join us on Friday, April 24th for another episode of Fault Lines, the National Security Institute's podcast that gets you smart fast on the national security and foreign policy debate shaking up America. We're on YouTube. Check out our channel there for a video of our smiling faces. If you like what you heard or saw, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe.